Hi everybody, welcome to Sunya IAS. So today I'll announce that Sunya IAS has come up with a wonderful course for Forestry Optional Foundation. In this orientation lecture, we'll see everything about forestry. Why should you take it as an optional? How should you prepare for it? What are the different cases in which you can get very high marks in this? So those of you who are thinking of taking this as an optional and those who have already taken this as an optional, this is going to be a very useful session for you. Okay, so watch it to the end. If you have any doubts, let me know in the comment section. We'll take all these doubts. Okay, now Indian Forest Services, has the civil services exam has both. You can apply for the civil services exam and you also have the same common prelims for Indian Forest Services as well. Now in Indian Forest Services, you are required to choose two optionals. Okay, and in that you have a list of many technical optionals, including the engineering optionals, geology, forestry, agriculture, engineering, mechanical engineering, so on and so forth. Okay, so you have to take two optionals. Okay, so wherein forestry sometimes becomes a very apt choice given the fact that there is limited time. Okay, so many of the candidates who appear for this exam also are writing civil services mains, so the time is limited. Okay, you have around 50 odd days. Okay, of course, yes, there are some candidates who exclusively prepare for it as well. Okay, but in general I'm speaking, so you'll have both these candidates and they have to choose two optionals, right? And both the optionals are of 200 marks. I'm just telling you the pattern so that this also makes sense to you, right? So now if you choose one of your optionals as forestry, that can give you a strategic advantage. Now this thing I'll also show the relevant facts also to at least make sure that you understand why I'm saying so. Okay, so one, let's say if you take forestry, and the other can be any of the technical subjects. Let's say you are a graduate of mechanical engineer, or perhaps you have some interest in geology, or let's say some other, let's say physics, chemistry, so on and so forth. So that gives you two separate optionals, and you have two compulsory paper in mains. One is English, okay, and the other is general knowledge. Now general knowledge, for those of you who are already preparing for civil services mains, this should not be that difficult. Similarly for English, if you give it at least appropriate time, you understand the patterns, that is not that difficult. Now because it's a technical exam, you have to have all your focus on these two optionals. If you score well here, 200 let's say 200 marks for one and basically 400 and 400 marks. Okay, if you score very well, this is where the game is won. So 200 marks for paper 1, 200 for paper 2. So effectively first optional is 400 marks, whereas second optional also 400 marks, right? So first of all, this is the basic pattern here. And why should you opt for forestry? So number one, it has a relatively easier syllabus. It has a lot of overlap with environment. This I'll show you also as I discuss syllabus also, right? So when you see the syllabus of it, you will see a lot of overlap with environment. For example, one reads about mangroves, one reads about forest succession, one reads about cold deserts, one reads about agroforestry, right? Basic nitrogen cycles, different resources, and also different facets of the tribes, that is tribe biology and also ethnobotany. I'll tell you as and when the sections come. So number one, you have a good overlap. So then forestry becomes easy for you to grasp. Okay, you read about this in prelims, you read about this in mains, specifically GS paper 3. Okay, second, it has a relatively short syllabus, and when I'm saying short, of course it's relative short compared to, let's say, mechanical or civil, which has a huge syllabus and takes a lot of time and revisions to master it. Okay, and whenever I'm saying this, also keep in mind the time frame. Okay, of course, the students who are exclusively preparing, they have a longer period of time. From prelims to mains, they roughly have 5 months. But some of the students also have roughly 2 months or less to prepare. In that, if you are able to cover forestry in a short span of time, this is very helpful for you, right? And marks and selected candidates, etc., the data I'll also show you, also shows that this is relatively easier to score. Okay, so for example, a lot of students, while writing civil services mains, they have humanities optional. Let's say you had political science, your sociology, different optionals, but those optionals are not available here. So when they take other technical optionals, they find it difficult to score. But relatively forestry is easier to score based on the fact you know some of it in environment. Okay, and I'll also help you to condense all of that information so that it becomes easy for you to score, so that you can spend more time on the second optional, right? Then there are a lot of higher selections. This I'll just show with the data of UPSC, okay? And yes, it has a lot of conceptual portions. For example, in paper 1, the people who are very good in silviculture, that is one of the most core areas, will definitely score very good in paper 1. Similarly, if you are good in forest management, you know the working plan, you know forest mensuration, then you can score very high marks as seen year on year. Okay, we have seen almost every year toppers scoring very high in forestry, right? So this makes, all these arguments make this a compelling choice to choose it as your optional. Now, some of you may also disagree in the case, let's say you have zoology, botany, but that is a very small section of people. I am relatively talking to the other section of people who have less time. They want to quickly, let's say, complete one optional. So this is why you should opt for forestry. Now, this is the most recent report of UPSC, right? In this, they have what they have done, the people who've got an interview call. So optional subjects and also how many attended the personality test, means these were the ones who cleared mains, and how many actually got selected, right? So here, as you will see, forestry, for example, right? People who attended the personality test, 195. Okay, so very, out of this list, the maximum people have chosen forestry. So that is something which is evident. Yes, people have chosen zoology, botany, mechanical, etc. But overall, if you see, there you have a very high portion of people who are choosing this. Okay, so that also tells that this is one of the most, let's say, popular optionals as well. By the way, when it's popular, so it also means there is very high competition as well. You cannot take it lightly, okay? And you just simply cannot write generic answers, which now will tell, we will also explore as to why it does not have a very high percentage, why only 50% of the people are able to make it through. And the reason for that is the kind of issues which people face while preparing for forestry. So in the first part, I'll just tell you how should you prepare for forestry in general. I'll also tell you my inputs as well, and then I'll tell you what are the issues which people face. So basically, if somebody is to prepare for forestry, of course they have to go through the syllabus. They should ideally go through all the previous year questions and at least 10-year previous year questions, right? They should do it very thoroughly. Then, for example, in paper 1, this is actually the core. Okay, in my lectures, I'll also have a very deep understanding on silviculture. And if you do silviculture and forest management, silviculture for paper 1 and forest management and mensuration for paper 2, this is actually the core part. Okay, because if you have seen the paper, most of the people try to attempt paper 1B and paper 2B. Why? Because these are very generic in nature. Okay, and people think that they will only write the generic, let's say, answers, and they would probably get very high marks. Okay, now if you are faced with very difficult, let's say, options, then you can definitely go for 1B and 2B. But let's say, what if you can attempt in paper 1A, you will get more questions on silviculture, more of the theoretical and conceptual portions. Herein you can tell a lot of species, a lot of varieties, a lot of case studies. Okay, so always put yourself in a position. If everybody is going to write generic answers in 1B and 2B, they cannot get very high marks. Okay, so understanding part is very important when you go for forestry, which is why a lot of students, when they go for some scattered compilations here and there, they're not able to get that understanding. And this is where I want to bridge the gap. And lastly is current affairs. Now, people who are giving the mains for civil services, they are very thorough with current affairs for their GS2, GS3. But when it comes to forestry, sometimes they're not able to link most of the portions here. Okay, relevant case studies, new legislations, the important committee findings. Now those portions are often ignored, and because of lack of time, these things get neglected. What is the consequence? People end up getting subpar scores. So out of 400, okay, combined, they get around 150 to 170 marks. In many cases, 170, 180. Okay. And the people who actually get through, many cases you will see 190 to 220 to 30 to 40. It's better and better as you go, right? And if you're able to get very good marks in forestry, you can always have a leverage. Even if you get, let's say, slightly lesser marks in second optional, or perhaps English, or let's say GK, in one of these papers you're not able to score as high, at least forestry will have your back. Okay. So this is how you should do. Now let me come to the issues here, and those who have already given mains, I would just like to ask very honestly, please assess yourself on all these parameters. Did you face an issue or not? Okay, and this is how, this is my problem. Okay, if you have a problem, that is also my problem, and this is the problem we are going to solve through this course. Okay, so one by one we'll see. So number one, the sources are pretty much scattered, and most of the people only refer one particular source. Okay, the Manikandan book. In that book also, many of the people have issue in the sense it's not properly structured or categorized. Many examples are missing, etc. So scattered sources, and in the new last 2 or 3 years you are seeing a newer kind of questions. Okay, more updates. For example, they are now asking you a lot of in-depth questions on Indian Forest Act of 1927, Wildlife Protection Act 1972. In fact, in this year's paper, at least in GK, you would have seen a question directly asked on forest conservation rules of 2022. Okay, many people were not aware. Similarly, questions on at least forest mensuration working plan. So they have advanced that level. So if you read it from scattered sources, not very comprehensively, you will not be able to write very good answers. Number one, content is not updated. You would see a lot of people writing questions on, let's say, mangroves. They do not include the forest report 2021. And every year, for example, for environment and forestry, there are a lot of updates. Okay, both, for example, this year, you will read, for example, those who know Shisham. Shisham is known as Dalbergia Sisu. Okay, so India for many years was trying for, let's say, if you've read about sites, so we wanted to have relaxed provisions for Dalbergia Sisu. The reason was that so that we can at least help our the people who are using forestry in general, right? So we wanted to improve our export, and we wanted to safeguard the livelihoods. So these kind of things make Dalbergia Sisu very important. Now a question can also be asked on the silviculture of Dalbergia Sisu. Okay, so questions like this, for example, similarly, in mangrove also you might have read about Avicennia marina, etc., whose genome, etc., has been sequenced. So a similar question on the regeneration of mangroves can be asked. Okay, and by the way, this year also a question on regeneration and afforestation of difficult sites again was asked. Okay, I'm giving you these examples just to illustrate the point. Okay, and third is one of the most common reasons as to why people get less marks. Very generic answers. Okay, if the question is on, let's say, ecological succession, they will only write what they've read in basic GS for, let's say, UPSC prelims. Okay, but that will not be sufficient. Here, people who have already had background, let's say BSc, MSc forestry, they are competing with you. So I'm not saying you have to write extremely technical answers, no, but what I'm saying, you need to know your keywords. You need to have some good, let's say, many people don't even remember the technical name of the species, and even when they write, they do not write it properly. So what's the point? You will lose marks. In many cases, still you have options of drawing diagrams, but many people don't do that, right? So these are the loopholes which makes your marks less. Okay, and this is where you have to focus. Then use of extremely minimal case studies and examples. Now you know that in generally GS2, GS3 for UPSC mains, you have to, civil services, you have to quote a lot of case studies, you have to differentiate your answers, but that kind of hard work is missing. You just read maybe the basic notes once, you go and give the exam thinking that there is very less competition, but let me tell you, the competition in the last 2 or 3 years has certainly increased. Last year also you had 150 plus vacancies, this year also similar vacancy, and many people are now foregoing their CSE attempt, okay, civil services attempt, and some they are exclusively focusing on that 5 months. So if you are one amongst them, you know that the competition is going to be very tough. And I'm not saying this to scare you. If you see the population, your friends or maybe your seniors and peers, they'll also tell you the same thing. Okay, so one very important rule of competition is to know exactly what your competitors are doing. Okay, that is there. Now, in many cases, what I have observed is that understanding is also lacking. And by the way, if you have a weak base in forestry, let's say somehow you do get an interview call, but then what would happen when you actually face the interview board? When they ask you normal questions, okay, tell me how would you measure the bole, diameter, girth of a forest? Okay, some basic questions on what are the different theories? Okay, what is the issue in this particular theory? Why India's forest cover is increasing on paper but not actually on ground? So you have to know the deeper understanding of forestry as an optional. This would need some efforts and some time, okay? And many people, because they, let's say they have to just read a resource, and because of unavailability of quality material, they somehow falter on this point as well, right? And then of course increasing competition, I've already outlined that for you. And last, of course, again, which ties to all your problems, is the issue of time scarcity. Okay, you could have done way better, let's say if you had more time, but people are already exhausted the moment civil services mains is like done. Okay, and then again you have to make a sprint for those 1.5 to 2 months. For at least those people, it's very tough. Similarly, for other people as well, for them, they have other problem, that is for time dilation. Okay, they are not able to sustain their motivation for a prolonged period of 5 months. Okay, so this is where you have to, like, these are your problems, and this is where I also tell you how I am going to solve these problems for you, so that forestry becomes a easy subject for you and you are able to capitalize and score very high. Okay, and you are having a good understanding, so whenever you write your answers in mains, or if you face the interview board, at least in forestry you are very well confident. That is the whole objective of this course. Okay, now I'll just, those who are watching this for the first time also, if let's say you did not understand Dalbergia, Sisu and the examples which I am giving you, of course when we do the course, everything will be done in a lot of detail. Okay, of course being very comprehensive and also concise. So if you are finding something new, you can note it down. Okay, if there is a, let's say, doubt session, etc., I'll also help you out, but still don't get bogged down. This is an orientation session. I will give you a lot of examples as I go along, but let's say you are a beginner or a fresher, that should not put you in a spot of bother. As you go along with the classes, all these things will be at your fingertips. Okay, now I'm also showing you the syllabus, and I'm also including this year's question paper just to give you a brief overview of how the optional paper is. Okay, paper 1, and this is first of all section A. It has 4 subsections, and out of this I'm telling you the core or the backbone of forestry is silviculture. Okay, so silviculture, first of all we read about general, and then we go into more technical part, which is silviculture systems. Silviculture, if you ask me, is simply the art and science of the forest management. Okay, establishment, development, care, maintenance, everything is included in silviculture. Okay, which includes, of course, how do you treat your nurseries, what are the different eco-physiological characteristics, impact of temperature, light, okay, drought, etc. on the different forests. This is the foundation. So in our foundation classes, we'll spend a lot of time here. Okay, and this will actually form your base. In many cases, if you don't have a solid foundation here, everything in forestry, you will just write generic answers. But if you have a good foundation here, this is where the difference is. Second, many people are often confused in silviculture systems. Okay, they don't know what is coppice system, what is shelter wood system. Okay, then coppice with seeds and different, let's say, parts. So here in our classes, we will discuss what is clear felling, different systems, applications of systems, and also for various, let's say, different trees and different plants, which system is applicable. Through my interactive discussions and classes, you will find this portion easy. Okay, so this is going to be done very properly. This is silviculture systems. Okay, and by the way, if you understand silviculture systems, you would understand, for example, what are the, let's say, causative factors, or what are the reasons, or what are the things you have to take into account when, let's say, you have to go for plantations, or if you have to introduce an exotic species, right? So all these things will be understood very well by you when you understand this part. Also, what are different types of seeds, what are problems with seeds faced, what are recalcitrant seeds, so on and so forth. Things will become very clear to you. Now, mangroves, everybody reads about mangroves in cold desert in your general environment. Here we'll go into more detail. Okay, for example, the species of mangroves. Okay, so number 1, examples of species of mangroves. Then the afforestation of the different difficult sites. For example, how would you go for afforestation in cold desert? Okay, and again, practically speaking, you know that climate change and desertification are one of the biggest threats to forest. And again, think of how would you save your mangroves in cold deserts. Okay, so that is a very good topic. Okay, now this is a small topic, but this has a huge return on investment. So we'll also see that. Okay, and then paper 1, section A, the last part is silviculture of trees. Okay, herein roughly 32 species are covered. Okay, right from Acacia catechu, okay, Acacia nilotica, we'll understand what exactly all these bamboo species, Butium monosperma. We were speaking about Dalbergia sisu. Okay, some of these you already would have known. For example, Prosopis juliflora. I'll also show this in slides. Santanum album, right? So some of, for example, you would know this. Maybe some of you may know of eucalyptus. Okay, you may know of Shoria robusta. That is nothing but sal. Okay, Tamarindus indica, so on and so forth. Now, if you are, let's say, bogged down, so do we have to remember all these names, etc.? In my lectures, in general, we'll encounter them in many places. We'll do them vegetation wise. We'll have the map of India, different places. So slowly, steadily, as you start and reinforce them, because see, all of a sudden nobody can remember all the different species, but there is a method to remembering them, and the basic method is, if you understand the geography of any place, then you can understand, let's say this is a high altitude region, why are conifers there? If there are conifers, what are species of conifers? Similarly, if you have a region of high rainfall, you'll find evergreen forests. What are those species? Deciduous forest, what are those species? And by the way, if you understand this, in general, your outlook towards forest will be greatly enhanced. Okay, then you would not have problems. And by the way, if you do this, automatically for the people who are already well versed with forestry, they are also then better at UPSC prelims as well. Okay, you will see questions on tamarind, you will see questions on non-timber forest products. For example, I think in 2021 UPSC had specifically asked which of the following is used for, or is let's say lemongrass oil, right, which was used for mosquitoes. Now lemongrass oil is actually a non-timber forest product, which is also one of the things we study in paper 2B. Okay, so things like this and facts like this also not only will help you in forestry, but that will also, again, let's say if you have to give the paper for prelims again, that will still put you in a good spot. Okay, so this was paper 1A. Now some of these questions, etc., and we will be discussing these questions and other previous questions in their respective topics in the course, right? So here I just tell you, like for example, you had a question, let's see, what are the threats to mangrove forest? Okay, now many of you who are seeing it, who have basic understanding, can write down many points. Okay, let's say sir, climate change, inundation, encroachment, right, so on and so forth. You can write down these things, but how would you differentiate your answer? Okay, what other things can you put in to make this answer stand out? Okay, so this is all what, for example, what is the significance of bamboo flowering? Okay, the gregarious bamboo flowering, what is so special about it? Why was this question asked here? By the way, these are the compulsory sections, right? Similarly, we will also understand, for example, what is the characteristic of a cold desert? Okay, some of you know what is a hot desert. Cold desert national park, does that ring a bell? Then choice of species, etc. Why are you choosing this particular species? What are your factors? Remember, this is also a technical paper, so we simply cannot write generic answers, right? We have to be technical, we have to be slightly scientific also in our approach. All these things we'll also understand. Okay, if you have already attended, like say, classes with me, you will also understand. We are going to discuss it in a very interactive manner, right? Similarly, for example, how are nurseries classified in India? Absolutely very static part. What is precision, silviculture, so on and so forth. Casuarina equisetifolia, this is also a direct which is present in your syllabus, right? See, by the way, is coastal rehabilitation using mangrove a success? So you see, whatever is mentioned in the syllabus, there is a high chance of that getting asked in some different formats. So that is going to be our object of study. Okay, so this is the, let's say, the portion of paper 1A. Now I'll again show you paper 1B. Okay, paper 1B is slightly those portions which you know about. Okay, of course there is a lot of detailing that has to be understood. We start with agroforestry, social forestry, and joint forest management. Okay, and tribology. Tribology is how the tribes interact. Okay, joint forest management again talks about, for example, that is also mentioned in your National Forest Policy of 1988. Okay, so this is where we include the forest dwellers and the forest bureaucracy together. Agroforestry, all these things we'll do in a lot of detail, and again this is a very, very important topic, okay, for paper 1B. Similarly, we read understand about forest soils, conservation of soil, right, watershed management, right, and here also we'll see a lot of new techniques as to how to conserve water. Okay, different classification of soils, etc. So this is all these things. For example, you may have known about these nitrogen cycles, carbon cycles, how this forest leaf litter, etc. helps, right? So all these things we'll be studying this in good detail. Now this is one topic which many people have an idea about, environment conservation and biodiversity, but still I will be covering it in a very revision friendly manner. So what if, for example, pollution, ozone layer depletion, acid rain, impact control, environmental monitoring, right? The concept of sustainable development, how the trees and forests can help, all these things we will be discussing, right? So this is a relatively easy topic, okay? And the last is tree improvement and seed technology. Now many people are not very confident about this topic because you have a certain overlap of biotechnology here as well. So what are, let's say, what is conventional breeding, what is the genetic, let's say, genetic modification in the breeding, clonal varieties, subclonal varieties, okay? What are the progeny tests, how can you have better seed orchards, so on and so forth. So now this is out of, for example, when I'm saying of paper 1B, this is a technical portion, okay? So there is no need to fear this, there is no need to even skip it, because see why? Every year, for example, in paper 1, you will have choice, you have to ultimately choose 5, you have to write 5 out of 8, okay? And even if, let's say, you're very well prepared in paper 1A, but you never know the distribution and the pattern of questions. So it's always better to do both the portions very well, and we'll also do that, okay? We'll leave no stone unturned in this pursuit of ours, okay? So when we do this very properly, this will give us a very good understanding, okay, as to how all these terms in very easy format with very relevant examples, okay? So even this portion will become very easy for you, all right? Tree improvement, seed technology, right? Here also, now if you see, in paper 1B, they also link some current affairs, okay? For example, you know, how do sacred groves help in conservation of biodiversity, okay? You have a 8 marker. Again, linkage with UN SDGs, right? In this portion, you will have relatively simpler questions. I'm saying relatively, okay? You'll have more technical questions in paper 1A, okay? Similarly, what is conventional breeding, then what is carbon nitrogen ratio, and things like this you also read about, okay? Nitrogen fixing plants, so on and so forth, right? Agroforestry, different questions, etc. were asked, right? Similarly, principles of bioengineering, for example, we have read about contour bunding, biofertilizers, different methods. So bioengineering techniques now they've asked you. So this is also a slightly technical portion. This also we'll read about in our, let's say, lectures. What is mycorrhiza? Now, for example, mycorrhiza you would know, just the very basics. It is a symbiotic association of fungus with the roots of higher plants. Now it's a 10 marker of role of mycorrhiza in plant growth and development of trees. And these are the questions wherein you have to draw diagrams as well. So whenever we do these relevant portions, I'll also show you diagrams, what you can draw, how can you differentiate your answers, okay? So this is how, so the lectures are, let's say, planned in such a manner. You have your previous year questions, but everywhere you will have certain X factors. If you do it properly, you have to just, let's say, write those answers with those relevant details, and trust me, you'll get very good marks, okay? Then detailed soil profile. Now those of you who only wrote this will not get enough marks, as opposed to those who actually drew a diagram, all the horizons if they had mentioned, etc., right? Key problems to expanding tree cover in urban areas, right? Now here also you can link your current affairs, you can link about urban forests, Miyawaki method, etc. You can give good case studies here as well, okay? Objectives of progeny testing directly from the part I was telling you, right? Tree improvement and seed technology, right? Again, considerations for choosing a tree improvement approach. So all these are very good questions, okay? That requires some level of understanding, right? And as you can see from the previous year questions, so we will be doing these things in good detail, and then these questions will not be as difficult for you, right? Now we move to paper 2A. Paper 2A, by default, I'm telling you, you have a very important topic, that is forest management, okay? And that this is also one of those topics which is not that well understood by the aspirants. Second is forest mensuration. Now many people dread mensuration simply because they don't want to get into the habit of, let's say, basic trigonometry or using those things, so sometimes they avoid it. So here also, first of all, we do forest management really well. Now this is a very good, let's say, portion, and by the way, when you also understand it, this will again give you a good 360 view of forestry, okay? So we'll also see this in good detail. Then you have forest working plan. Now this is a smaller topic. Forest one, by the way, this is a smaller topic, and every year you will get questions on forest working plan, okay? So we'll make sure through mnemonics and through word associations, we'll just remember this. This is a small topic, so we'll cover it very appropriately, right? Then forest measuring, this is the mensuration part of it, and remote sensing. Now remote sensing is relatively easier, okay. We'll see the different types of satellite, the bands, how is the GIS remote sensing working. But forest measuring requires some effort also, right, from your side also. I'll try to minimize that effort for you. We'll see different formulas, how to understand all of this, form factor, volume estimation methods, okay. And by the way, think from a forest engineer. Now if you have to maximize the yield from a forest, first of all you should know how to you measure a forest, right? Then only the yield, etc., the increment, etc., can be maximized. So this is why this is a very important topic, okay. The people who are good at it will definitely score very good marks in paper 2. Then you have surveying, okay, and forest engineering, right? Both are good topics. Here you will also see different kinds of bridges, cantilevers, so on and so forth, maps, how you read maps, okay, roads, bridges, this is timber, etc. So this is also a slightly technical topic wherein you have to, let's say, different kind of measuring instruments, you should know all these things. So this also we will cover in good detail, so that all will also be easy, okay. So you would have seen questions, for example, by the way, all these questions which I have added are from the year 2022, okay, right. So questions on what is the success of a commercial forest plantation, right, methods of preparation of volume table, right, different camber gradient. So you can see from these questions, these are slightly technical in nature, and this requires good study on your part. Now if you go through books, and let's say if you go through LS Khanna and even more technical books, this will take a lot of time, okay. So what I have tried to do through my lectures, through, let's say, very revision friendly lectures, I will try to bridge this gap, okay. So wherein you will cover these portions but in a very time and revision friendly manner, fine. Similarly, questions on working plan, what is surveying, principles related to surveying, forest management, etc. This is also the kind of questions which were asked, right. Now this, for example, application of remote sensing and GIS, etc., right. So when we cover this portion, we will ensure that we write a very good answer with appropriate diagrams, keywords, phrases. So here you can maximize your marks, right. So these are the certain kinds of questions which have been asked in paper 2A. Now we move to the last portion of the syllabus, okay. And still I would say after this lecture, go through the syllabus once, okay, and see the previous year question again. Then you will even appreciate the kind of details are getting asked, right. Now forest ecology and ethnobotany, now this is one portion. Some of it we have already covered in environment, okay. I will again cover it, for example, forest community, vegetation, what is ecological succession, climax community, sub-climax community, etc., etc., right. Nutrient cycling, forest types in India, this you also read about in geography, okay, in environment as well. Then taxonomic classification, and by the way, now this is very important, the role of ethnobotany in Indian medicine system, okay. Now those of you who don't know what is ethnobotany, let's say when I tell you the term biopiracy, when I tell you access and benefit sharing, Nagoya Protocol, so this is also some related to ethnobotany, okay. Ayurveda, Unani, distribution of these botanical features, etc., aromatic plants. So this is also something we'll see, and this is the second part here. Ethnobotany is very interesting. There are very good examples we'll see in the classes, very good case studies. So this will become an easy part for you, right. Then we have forest resources and utilization. Now this is actually one of the most important sections of paper 2B. Why? Because all the non-timber forest products, timber, so first of all we'll see different timber process, grading of timber, how is timber, let's say, properly taken out. Then different non-timber forest produce, for example, resins, oleoresins, different grass oils, leaf oils, dyes, tannins, etc. All these things, plywood, for example, so on and so forth, everything we'll study here, okay. So this, and by the way, this will have, let's say, every year I would say at least 1 or 2 questions from this are also asked in UPSC prelims, okay, which is why sometimes the people who already have forestry as an optional, again if they have to give the prelims, they always have an upper edge because they do things, and although already you know environment has a very huge weightage, so this then again adds to their advantage. All right, now the last 2 sections, one is forest protection and wildlife biology, okay. So this is also a very interesting part. We talk of biotic, abiotic stresses, we talk of protection of wildlife, okay. We talk of, let's say, forest fire, natural causes of forest fire, man-made causes, protection against forest fire, so on and so forth, right. Control against grazing, browsing animals, etc. Impacts of encroachment, poaching, grazing, right. So these are very important topics which we cover. And last is forest economics, Now, forest economics also has an overlap with how you extract your forest produce, right? And last is legislations, right? So right from Indian Forest Act of 1927, Forest Rights Act of 2006, Forest Conservation Act of 1980, right? CAMPA Act of 2016, all these things are covered in a lot of detail. Here they even ask you sections. For example, what is section 37, 32 to 37 of this particular act? Okay, so we will be covering those things in good detail, right? Not just that, Indian forest policies, etc. Fine. And by the way, in your syllabus, there is a small typing mistake. And by the way, this question is also asked sometimes in the interview, that what is one mistake which is there in the syllabus. Now, if you see this line, Indian Forest Policy of 1984, 1952 and 1990, can you tell me what is the problem? Okay, I'll tell you the answer. These two are correct, but there is no National Forest Policy of 1990. It's a typing mistake. It should have been 1988. Okay, so even sometimes this is asked. And apart from that, of course, we will be covering the different acts and their relevant provisions in very good detail, including the parts of current affairs. Okay, so this is the syllabus. Okay, and this is, let's say, the different kind of questions: biotic and abiotic stresses, specialized uses of wood with examples. Okay, so here also care has been taken to make the slides and the lectures in a manner that you are able to definitely get all of this correct. Fine, you are able to write it down. Principles of Ayurvedic systems, so on and so forth. Provisions of Indian Forest Act, right? Components of desert ecosystem. So here also some of these things, for example, human wildlife conflict is also what we read about in general. Okay, but how can we differentiate our answers here? That is one of the main focuses of this course. Fine. National Forest Policy of 1988, we just discussed about it. And by the way, these policies are directly asked, so you have to prepare them in detail so that you are able to write a 15 marker. Okay. Similarly, Forest Conservation Act. So now you see legislations, because that is properly mentioned, these questions are directly asked here. All right. And if you see the last, commensalism, amensalism, mutualism, symbiosis. So this is something you read so often in your environment. Now, how can you actually make a difference when you write very good examples for all of them? In many cases, people don't remember the examples, right? So this, of course, is a part of forest ecology. That is one of the sections of paper 2B. Hence, this question was asked, right? So before I just tell you the approach, I just wanted to give you an overview of the old syllabus, okay? And the previous year question of 2022, this you should do also at your end, and especially for the people who are thinking of joining this optional, okay? Because you also should apply your mind. How do you see these questions? How do you see the different topics, okay? Now I'll tell you about my approach and overall how the Sunya IAS foundation course for forestry, how is that different? Okay, so there is going to be a consolidation of sources, okay? So referring various books, different reports, different committees, okay, case studies, etc. Now, if you follow these lectures and the handouts, etc., and the discussions, that will solve all your problems. So the first thing is, I've tried to put all these things at one place, number one. Then the content is extremely updated, okay? Most of the case studies, legislations, examples for 2023 also have been included here. So that should help you. You don't have to run for other sources, okay? Then in every topic, first of all, we will define that topic, and I'll also show you what is my approach in general. We will have very specific keywords, okay? Okay, and then in every topic, let's say when the topic ends, we'll again revise that topic, okay? So that let's say we are discussing mangroves. Now in mangroves, you cannot just simply write a very generic definition. You have to mention its, let's say, the coordinates, whether it's present in intertidal zones, what are these, whether it's a part of champion and safe classification, which subpart, all these things in one particular small definition. If you write all the keywords, definitely the examiner is going to be impressed. So that is how the pedagogy and the classes are designed, right? Then this is also where you can differentiate a lot of examples, a lot of technical names, species, vegetations, and good case studies, important case studies of tribals, international case studies, etc. So when we include all of this, this will give us more weightage, okay, in our answers, okay. And for example, we cover a topic like mangroves, cold deserts, working plan, ethnobotany, all of that. So the moment we are done, we are also discussing previous year questions in that particular subtopic. So what would happen? You first of all see the lecture, you will see all its updates, all the terms, and then you also see the previous year questions, okay. So then ideally what you should do now, after watching the lecture, now maybe after a gap of, let's say, a day or two, write that same question down and try to improve it. The more iterations you do, the better your answer will reflect. And ultimately, you're given marks simply for what you write and what not for what you know. So through this will help you. Now, I'll also show you, in my classes, I make sure I give a lot of very good mind maps. Now, mind maps will consolidate everything, let's say in one slide. So if you're reading a topic, let's say the non-timber forest produce, all the important non-timber forest produce in one particular slide. So your revision becomes very important, and this is very important for consolidation, right? We will also have weekly doubt solving sessions, okay? So I think on every Saturday or Sunday that will be communicated to you. You will have the access to the lectures, and then these will be live weekly doubt solving sessions. So whatever doubts you have, we will discuss it on a weekly basis, okay? So that will again give you better understanding, and all of this combined actually helps you to get a very deep level understanding, which will reflect in better marks in mains and also in better answers during your interview. Overall, giving you very good learning outcomes from forestry. Okay. Now, my slides will be very immersive, very interactive. A lot of information is going to be compressed. A lot of mind maps, charts, flow charts, diagram, etc. will be there. You can make the best use of that. Okay. So first of all, that helps you. Similarly, the way lectures are designed, how I deliver them, how I keep it engaging, that also helps you. Similarly, you will get a lot of mind maps. For example, this is ecological succession. What are the theories? What is polyclimax theory, monoclimax, information theory, theory of Whittaker? How many types of it? Primary, secondary, autogenic, allogenic, autotrophic, heterotrophic, hydrarch, mesarch, all these things in one go. What is the definition of ecological succession? Similarly, what are the examples? Let's say, what is the example of ecological succession in a tropical montane forest, in a desert ecosystem, in a different, let's say, grassland, or in an aquatic ecosystems, along with the name of the species. Okay. So if you know that you are starting with a lichen and you are ending with the forest, what is that name of the forest? Just remember all of this in one. So I've covered ecological succession in less than 1 minute, isn't it? Of course, this will make a lot of sense when I've covered this topic. So let's say if I cover ecological succession and then I revise everything through a mind map, this is where things will get embedded in your head, right? So that will also help. Similarly, we discussed this in the list of 32 species, okay, in the silviculture of trees. So similarly, all the updates on these species also we'll cover. Okay, so Prosopis juliflora is in the news. Why? Because the Delhi government is trying to remove it, right? And they want to now have indigenous variety. Similarly, Prosopis juliflora has become a problem when we talk of bunny grasslands. So we'll also see that part, right? Then, let's say forest conservation rules. What are updates have happened? Not just this. For example, Wildlife Protection Act, because that is mentioned in the legislations. And in forestry optional, you will get more detailed questions. Okay. So when we do forest conservation rules, we'll do this in more detail, because the analysis and the detailing aspect will be, what is expected from you will be higher, because this is a core technical subject, right? So the idea to show this to you was that not only we are doing the static part, but we are also integrating current part. Similarly, when we do mangroves, we'll also add data of 2022, this global report, just to give you more integrated current affairs free there. Similarly, different case studies. For example, this Behali Reserve Forest in Assam was in the news. So we'll see, and you can add it when, say, if you want to have good examples in case of social forestry, agroforestry, you can add it there. Okay, so we'll do that. Similarly, the Western Ghats, etc., wherein a lot of conservation, etc., is going carried out. So different case studies will also be a part of it. So now let me summarize. I think you've already gone through all of this part. Okay, so what are we giving to you? So number one, you will have lectures, okay, very comprehensive yet concise. Okay, the idea is not to bombard you, the idea is to give you lectures which you can easily watch, easily digest, and make the best use, and then replicate in the exam hall. Okay, they will be followed with handouts. So again, things with handouts, what you get, you also get better, let's say, content, you have better availability of information. That would also help you. Previous year discussions will be followed by every topic. That is a very important part of this, including weekly doubt solving. Okay, we also have mentorship, in the sense that you want to have few doubts solved. If you want to connect also with me, you can definitely do so. All right, and after every unit, let's say if I complete paper 1A, so entire 1A I'll revise very shortly with you. Similarly, 1B with you, 2A with you, 2B with you. So how will that help? Now, when the exam we will be very near, then you cannot again rewatch all the lectures or revisit all your notes. then these very powerful revision sessions will be very handy. Okay, and in case if you have attended the Ruthless Rapid Revision program of environment with me, you would know that we cover in revisions, we cover things very holistically and yet in a very time bound manner. Okay, so let's say in a span of 2 or 3 days we'll revise the entire forestry syllabus again once, right? So all of these things combined will give you a very good understanding of forestry, and it is my, let's say, promise that this will help you score very good marks. Okay, and you'll not be left with any doubt. Okay, any of the doubts. So again, seeing what all we have seen overall, just to give you a good sense of completion, what we have seen. So we started this with the pattern of the optionals. Okay, then why should you opt for forestry? And again, to this you can just add, this will also help you in prelims. Suppose you have to give prelims again, right? So that is going to again help you. Then we saw in general forestry having the maximum people who attended the test, and I showed how should you prepare forestry, what are the lacunas or the problems which you have in forestry, right? Then we saw the syllabus of each section, we saw the previous year questions, and then we saw the approach, how is Sunya IAS going to help you in this, okay, specifically how to cover forestry in general, and this is going to cover all the important lacunas, right? So with this, the idea is that you can maximize your score out of 400, right, with all these, let's say, things, right? So when you do that, ultimately you are going to, overall you are going to have very good let's say marks here, and only you have to then focus on your paper or the optional 2, right? With that said, I hope, and all the details etc., the relevant links are given in the comment section, so please go through the comment section. Those of you who are interested for the forestry optional course, right, I hope that in case if you do join and if you make your mind to join, we will connect very soon in these classes. And still, if you have any doubts, you can just let's say visit the sections and the links to get your doubts solved from the team. Okay, the team will be helping you, guiding you to make the relevant choice, right? So hope to meet you soon. All the very best. Thank you.